Welcome to Ditch Digger CEO today. Boy, we've got a amazing story I had to talk about to tell you. We've got a not just a great entrepreneur, because everybody we interview is a great entrepreneur. We make sure of that we vet people. We make sure they're the best. Now, but and usually top 1% is our demand. Any CEO founder we interview is top 1%. But in this case, this is a spectacular story. Dr. Joel Myers, who's not just top 1%. In my opinion, Chris, he's top number one in the space.
Oh, yeah.
And with his vision as an entrepreneur, not only has he solved lots of problems like most of our entrepreneurs have, boy, he also saved lives, in my opinion, Chris. And he's also saved property. Think about that. When we tell you this story, think about the properties and the value of property he saved. Think about the lives his vision has saved. All right, this is not just your normal entrepreneur. So welcome, Dr. Joel Myers, the Ditch Digger CEO today. Thanks for being here, Dr. Joel.
My pleasure. Delighted to be here with you.
Dr. Joel, we want to talk about, we like to talk about kind of your big beginnings and where it all came, where it came from. Who are these parents that raised you? How'd you become this inquisitive mind that wanted to solve problems at such a young age? And then kind of along the way, who is there in your life as you talk about where you've gone and where you're going to go in the future. Okay, so that's kind of the goal, and we're blessed to have you on board today. So, Dr. Joel, if you can kind of start from the time you were a kid, if you want, or start wherever you want. We'd love to hear your story.
Sure, absolutely, and I've been blessed actually. I've lived my dream and had a lot of people along the way who have helped me and were inspired somehow by my dream and followed me. I've had dozens of people that spent their entire life working for me, former students from their first job on to retirement. So I really have been blessed. So the story started when I was 3 years old, growing up in Philadelphia, when I fell in love with snow. When it snowed or there was a threat of snow, I was excited. I remember when I was 7 years old, a snowstorm trapped my aunt at our house. And I was just awestruck by how the snowstorm completely shut down the city. She couldn't leave, people couldn't travel. And if everything was at the same time beautiful, the snow just made it clean and beautiful. And so snow was what it was all about for me as I was growing up. And after that snowstorm, I said, I'm going to be a weather forecaster. I knew what I wanted to do from an early age. And when I was 11, my father showed me an article about a female meteorologist in Boston who was selling forecasts to fuel oil dealers. Now, I was entrepreneurial as a kid, a paper route, and looking for ways to make a buck here and there. And we grew up in a household with talk of money, but didn't have much. And but when I was 11, when I heard this story and read about it, I said, boy, wouldn't it be terrific if I could combine my burning desire to be a weather forecaster with my entrepreneurial spirit? So that was my dream. Now, when it came time to go to college, I obviously wanted to study meteorology. The only place I could afford to go was Penn State University. Tuition was $250 a year. It was State University, growing up in Philly. And so that's what I chose and got in. And it turned out Penn State had the best meteorological program in the world. So talk about being blessed. So I got a terrific education, got great mentorship. Dr. Charlie Hosler, who a little later became the department head, knew of my dream. And actually, he had ideas of how to apply weather forecasts to business, and didn't think forecasts were being used to the fullest, what the capability of the science was. And of course, that fit in exactly with what I wanted to do. So stayed at Penn State, got 3 degrees there, was thrown into teaching, actually, the basic weather forecasting course, my first year as a graduate student. The professor I was supposed to assist was doing a lot of consulting and never showed up. And so I had to teach the course I had taken just 2 years later, 2 years earlier. Had some graduate students in and juniors, about 40 students at a lab, and 3 times a week, total of 9 hours.
Wait, how old were you at this point, Joel? About how old were you?
21.
21, and you're teaching kids at your age and older, huh?
Yep, and some who were PhD students. So I had to, the professor didn't show, so I was literally one day ahead of the students. Whatever happened today, but this after 3 years of doing this and getting better and better at it, the professor left, and they gave me the course to teach, and I taught this course for total of 21 years till I retired from Penn State. But that was a blessing too, because by the time I had stopped teaching, I had taught 17% of all the weather forecasters in the United States their basic skills in weather forecasting.
Wow. Well, okay, wait a second. Hold on. We gotta slow. This is amazing. All right, so 21, you're basically just jumping because the teacher, the professors aren't showing up, and then eventually you get the job. For 21 years, you taught the class that you only learned a couple years before.
That's right. I learned much more by teaching, of course, than you learn a lot by teaching, right? Because you get questions, and so I spent a great deal of time, just making sure that I could impart knowledge and teach them. And of course, I lived that because I had my 10,000 hours in Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours. I had the 10,000 hours in by the time I arrived at Penn State. So, because I lived the weather. And of course, the formal education taught me a lot more. And so it was just, it all fit together so great. So I learned a lot in teaching. I experimented in the classroom. I developed techniques. For example, one thing I found that as good as some forecasters were, collaboration led to a better forecast. So I'd have 40 students in the class, and part of what we did in the spring semester was they'd have to make a forecast. So each day I'd come in and they have to make a forecast and for different places, for different time periods. And I had a particular verification scale. And so at the end of the semester, the best student had 300 errors and the worst had 1,400. But if I took the average each day of the 9th and 10th ranked forecast classmate, but how they ranked the 9th and 10th best forecaster in the class of 40, and took that average, it would beat the number one forecaster. So what I decided was, listen, I'm fighting against free. The only way I can sell AccuWeather services, I've got to be better than everybody else, because the National Weather Service gave forecasts away for free. So I've got to be more accurate, forecast with more detail, more specifics, and better, so businesses can justify buying weather forecasts. So I hired the best forecasters out of my class each year and put them together and have them collaborate and work together to produce a forecast that was more accurate than anybody else could produce.
Well, what year about was that when you started that?
I started 1962. The second year as a graduate student, I got my first client. Actually, Charlie Hosler, Dr. Hosler, my mentor, he knew of my dream, and the local gas company called him and said, "Is somebody be able to provide me with more accurate forecast for gas send out?" And he said, "Just a man for you." He gave it to me. I called, and that was my first client. And then I said, "Hey, I'm going to try and get more." So I called natural gas companies across the Northeast, signed up a few. I figured out that snowmaking, artificial snowmaking for ski areas was very dependent not only on temperature, but on humidity and wind conditions.
Okay. All right, so guess what? I used you guys, and I didn't. But it was 1981 that my snow business began, and within a year we found out about you, and we're using AccuWeather. It's so funny, but you're right. It was the best. There's nothing better than that. You couldn't rely on the news the night before. You had to be more accurate for our customers, right? Yep. So that's amazing. Because snow businesses were a big business, like you're saying, the ski hills, but also snow removal that I was into, right? And we still
yes, indeed. So I came up with that service in 1967, and in fact, two of the first cities that signed up for the service, one in Pennsylvania, one in Virginia, are still our clients today since 1967, and we take a lot of pride in the longevity. 97% of our tens of thousands of clients renew from one year to the next. So it's not only the accuracy and the service, but constantly innovating and giving clients more of what they need, understanding their business, and being great at customer service.
Okay, and for you to be the one to really start in this thing and still be top of the game. You said what I believe is the secret sauce: constantly innovating, never stopping. Right?
Yep, constantly, especially in this day and age, but it's always been the case. Developing new products, new services, new ways to present the information, better understanding your clients' needs, and putting all that together. But developing a culture with 400 employees, everybody on the team has to fully understand that. So our culture is around ICE, ICE, innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. And we have all kinds of exercises we go through and teamwork to make sure that the team practices that and is completely embedded into that philosophy.
I love it. I love it. We believe that a lot of the same stuff, but I love ICE. I love the way you just lay that out there. Innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship, because people understand what entrepreneurship is, but when you live it every day like you have, hopefully your teammates understand the importance of it. And I'm sure many of your teammates in your business are shared entrepreneurs with you, right? They're creating things, they're thinking of ways to serve the customer better. And that's not common in a lot of organizations.
Well, hopefully every one of the employees, team members here, practices that, understands it, and lives it, because then they're contributing to the team and to our mission more effectively.
Yeah.
You're right, it's a way of living. Now, the ultimate entrepreneurs work 7 days a week, never stop thinking about innovation and how we can be better. And I've got the leadership team is amazing. Most of them work 7 days a week, one way or another. They're just committed to what we've done. We've saved over 12,000 lives, prevented injury to over 100,000 people, saved companies nearly $100 billion, at least 85, we have pretty well estimated 85 billion. So it means a lot. There's no other place on the planet like this in weather. And so the people who work here take great pride in being a part of this and accomplishing what we've done, but also what we mean to people and serving them every day.
I love it. And again, exactly. So when I look at this, when I look at your model, and again, when you're saving lives, when your team knows you can save lives with the good work that you do, how incredible is that to be on that team, right? And when you understand, what we believe in as Christians, I believe in as a Catholic Christian, is we're here to serve others. And if we do that in an amazing way, God blesses us with amazing experiences, right? And you're doing it every day, and when you have a mission. So in my businesses, Doc, we really don't save lives too often. Hey, if we plow your snow and there's no accidents on your parking lot, we might save some damage, some injury. But boy, low odds of saving lives. We have safe crews. We have a lot of people working across the country in the businesses we do in paving and roofing and some dangerous jobs. And if we're very, very safe, we don't risk life, hopefully, right? So maybe we save a few lives there but what you do is so evident. I mean, when you can make people aware of hurricanes like you guys did in Katrina and others. I mean, I can't imagine that it's not a lot more lives than 12,000 lives have been saved with what you've done. But tell me about that. Tell me about the experience in Katrina, how amazing that was, because that was one of the things I think people recognize AccuWeather more than ever. When that happened, when you were warning people in that area of the country that it was coming way before it came, for these people to be ready to boarding up property, to be getting their people they loved out of harm's way. Can you tell us about that experience a little bit?
Absolutely. Well, the first time we really saved lives was back with Tropical Storm Agnes in 1972, where we predicted the flooding in the Poconos and up into New York State. Before the National Weather Service, and we said it would be lethal flooding, and we probably saved a dozen lives. That was 1972. Hurricane Katrina, 2005, New Orleans. So 3 days before it hit, and we knew the year before there was some false alarms about a hurricane that didn't come. So the psychology was such that people may not believe it. So, and we knew it was going to be bad. So, and we knew that the main damage would be the tremendous rain would cause probably the dam to the north of New Orleans to break, and a lot of rain a lot of water would come flooding down. So we said, starting 72 hours before it hit, that the city of New Orleans will be underwater for days. 50 to 80% of the city of New Orleans will be underwater for days or weeks. We know what it is to cry wolf or not crying wolf. take this seriously. Now, right up to the evening before the hurricane hit, Max Mayfield, the head of the National Hurricane Center, briefed President Bush, quote, "There'll be minimal damage in the city of New Orleans. Ignore the rabble rousing from AccuWeather," because we had been to warn people on all the news networks, and it was pretty well known by that time what we were saying. Thank goodness we did it, because we got emails and letters from people that say, "Thank goodness because of what you said, I went in and got my aunt out of there. I got my sister out of town. This and that." And I mean, that's what we're all about. And so, of course, what we predicted is what happened. It was a terrible disaster. We don't know what the final death toll is, the official death toll, at 1,800, but it was much greater than that, because a lot of homeless people and so on unaccounted for. So that's what we're all about. And we did it again with Hurricane Helene, where we said 5.5 days before it hit, 5.5 days. We said for extreme northern Georgia, western North Carolina, and eastern Tennessee, this is a catastrophe in the making. There will be catastrophic flooding like it's never been seen before in this area. And of course, we know that what happened. And a lot of people there, unfortunately, were unprepared, but people that listened to us got out. But we get emails, I can share them with you, just about every week from people saying, "You saved my life." The warning of tornado from AccuWeather was ahead of everybody else. We just got one 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we interviewed them. We tracked the person down. A woman, Mrs. Johnson, sent us an email and said, literally, "You saved my life, my family's life. I got the warning from you on our free app, the free AccuWeather app. And we ran to a neighbor's house because we were in a mobile home, and told her they had no awareness of, AccuWeather says I believe them." They went down to the basement. 10 minutes later, tornado came through, wiped out part of the neighborhood. Unfortunately, there were some fatalities. She wrote to us, they literally were alive because of AccuWeather, because the warning didn't go off on the other phones until the tornado was already passed. So that's what we're all about. And we tracked this person down. It took several days through the newspaper and the local government to find her. And we got her on camera to repeat what she had said in an email. She sent an email just out of the blind to our customer service department. But we have stories like that literally every week or every other week. And that's, you're right, probably the number is well over 12,000, but there are cases like this that we can document.
All this started because a 7-year-old kid was bothered. How the heck did everything shut down because of this darn snow thing? And how do you stop it? Okay, it's incredible to think about this. But when you look at your vision as when you first started the business, you're a young kid, also. Really, I mean, you're what, in your late teens, early 20s, basically. While you're going to school, right?
Well, I started the business at 22. That was my first client. Yeah, as a second-year graduate student.
22 years old, and so the vision. What kind of, did you have a long vision back then, or was it just like this year we're gonna make money, or this year we're gonna serve some customers? Tell me about when did you start visualizing where this thing could go? Because I mean, it's incredible where it's gone. And did you ever think it could be this big of a solution provider?
At that age, no, but I was determined to prove that my forecasts were more accurate and that they could be of value. So, but of course, people didn't believe it. My family, other people, for the most part, except my parents, always believed me. But you're crazy. I mean, weather forecasts are free. People aren't going to pay you for weather forecast. You're one person. The National Weather Service, called the U.S. Weather Bureau in those days, had thousands of people, all this data and so on. How can you possibly compete with them? You're crazy. And a lot of people I called, ski areas and others, thought I was too. So I had to call 25,000 prospects before I had 100 paying customers. My goal was to reach 100 paying customers. And it took me 10 years to get there, and 25,000 calls, which meant I had 24,900 rejections. And people say, well, how would you keep going? I mean, I just kept pestering people. I believed in myself. And that's what entrepreneurs have to do. Now, I changed my sales pitch along the way. I changed the service. It evolves. You have to constantly evolve and be curious and be open. And that's what it's all about. But finally, I got my wish of 100 paying customers. And then I had to hire some people, of course, to help me. And then, of course, I set my goal for 1,000 customers. And when I reached 1,000, it was 10,000. And it was 10,000, it was 100,000. And so now we serve thousands of businesses. We serve 700 newspapers, 500 radio stations, over 100 television stations. We run the AccuWeather network. We serve more than half the Fortune 500 companies, thousands of businesses, government agencies all over the world. And on AccuWeather.com and on the AccuWeather app, we reach over 200 million people a month. And with uniques, but overall, over the period of a year, over 1 billion people, because we're behind the scenes too on Alexa, and a lot of places don't use our brand, but AccuWeather powers some of these different devices and services because these companies have found that we're the best, and that's what we keep driving for. And the competition never ends, so we got to improve every day.
Okay, so where the heck did you develop this, like this chip on your shoulder where a loss it isn't a loss? Somebody turns you down at the 24,900 people that said, "Get out of my play, get out of here, I don't need you, leave me alone," right? How did you keep the positivity and the confidence in those first 100, and let's say in that first 10-year period? How'd you stay confident? Well, tell me about what kind of character do you believe you had that your parents basically groomed you with, and then how do you do the same thing today when you talk to your family, your teammates, your leaders?
Well, what I tell people is know your goal, know your business, focus, focus, focus. Don't quit, don't quit, don't quit. I mean, that's what it's about. You got to believe in yourself, and you got to believe in what you're doing. Be subject to modification. I don't know. It's just who I am, and I've evolved, and I'm lucky, and my family's always been supportive. I have great kids and such, and who knows? I mean, I'm just who I am, and as I said, I'm blessed because I would do it the same way if I was starting today.
When you think about a couple of things you mentioned, I want to go back onto like. You discovered this early, and I was in probably in my late 20s before I read Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours to be an expert, right, at whatever you're passionate about. And at that time I was every day I was on a excavator and a machine running, grading driveways and parking lots, and I started doing the math, and most people think a 2,000-hour work year is a good amount of hours in a year, but I track my hours, and I worked 4,000 to 5,000 hours a year. I worked mega hours because I love what I did, and I was I was the leader of my own little business, so it made sense to work hard. But it takes you half the time to get to that, or even 60% less time to get to that over the years, right? To the expertise in anything you do when you work those type of hours. So did you ever measure that at all, like kind of where you were going and how and teach that at all, the 10,000 hour
I mentioned it. What I say is compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. Albert Einstein, certainly one of, if not the most intelligent person of the last 500 years, certainly among the top 5, and he said compounding is the eighth wonder of the world, and it is. And so if you improve yourself 1% a day, just 1% a day, net improvement over 365 days, at the end of the year, you're 34 times as great as you are in the beginning. If you slip 1% a day, you're down to 3% of what you started with. And the difference between improving 1% a day and slipping 1% a day over 365 days, that ratio is 1,240 to 1. 1,240 to 1. So the message is clear. Gain in some way and don't slip back at all each day. It's like in the stock market. If you lose 50% of your money in a bear market, you need to make 100% going forward just to get back to even. And so that's something to keep in mind, in the back of your mind. You want to improve. And that's what I try and teach. And that's what we're all about. And it's not only about yourself, but it's how you're contributing, how we're improving the products and services we're offering to our clients. I always want to deliver more than people are paying for. Napoleon Hill, in his book, The Laws of Success, talked about that, how you always want to deliver more than you're paid for. and it's so obvious, but they don't teach it in the schools. You go to McDonald's, you get a $16 an hour job, and most people say, well, I'm only getting $16 an hour. I'm not going to put myself out beyond that. Then there's the person that says, I'm going to give it all. So he's doing a 32, or she's doing a 32 dollar an hour job. And the manager says, I can't afford to lose this person. I'm going to raise them to 20 or $22 an hour, still going to make a profit. And then the person does a $64 an hour job, and then he's being paid $50 an hour, and then he doubles that. And before you know it, he's running the McDonald's, and then he's the regional manager. And before you know it, he's running the whole company. He's the CEO. I've met some people like that started out that way on the ground floor, but just kept working harder and giving more and became the CEO.
I love it. It's such a simple thing when you think about it, but people don't think this way often enough, right? When it comes to that, always deliver more than you're paid for, right? I mean, and when it's really just being a servant and whatever. If you're doing a job, hopefully you love the job. You love it enough that you're passionate about it, and therefore you want to serve people like nobody else. And therefore you will be to the point where exactly what you said, you're delivering more than you're paid for. And boy,
and that's what AccuWeather is all about: delivering to our clients more than they paid for, continually improving the service, but not charging for every little thing you're doing. You're a valuable partner to them. Same thing with our app. We keep making improvements. It's a free app, but we keep making the value proposition greater and greater, and using that compounding argument. How can we offer more and be better than everybody else?
You're never going to stop being better than everybody else as long as you as a leader continue to inspire everybody around you to think the same thing. Now, when we look at technology, so we have I'm an entrepreneur that has focused mostly on paving in my life and my career, paving parking lots and asphalt and concrete. Okay, but I'm involved in about 10 other businesses besides my 5 paving businesses, and most of them are serving the same customer, Joel. They're serving facilities owners all over the country. So Walmart is a big customer, Prologis, Home Depot, Lowe's, and many others, Target, and many others. Okay.
Many of those are our clients as well.
There you go. So with those clients, right, we constantly figure out more new ways to serve them better. And then when we're successful, we spin out a new company to serve them under our group of companies, right? And I got to tell you, with what we're doing and what I see you doing, if we don't continue to watch what's going on in technology, we're going to fall behind. And this all the new stuff when we think in our industry, the changes that we made because of artificial intelligence and because of 3D printing and 3D technology, as well as using thermal imaging for our business. So there's so many things we're doing differently, and now it's robotics coming our way, right? So we have to stay on top of every one of these new technologies, and we try hard to do that. But in your industry, when you look at your industry, I'm sure AI is becoming something that's going to be important in your industry. Can you tell us a little about what you see in the future that's going to change your industry, or that you're going to make sure you guys are on top of as the industry changes?
Absolutely. Well, we used AI before it was called AI. I talked about the consensus and collaboration providing a superior forecast. What we did back in the 80s, realized that by taking the best of different forecast models, what was the best component, and putting them together in the right way, and then having that as the base forecast with the computer, but then having our meteorologist add additional value to it. It was a form of AI. And we did it with the wording of the forecast in a lot of different ways. So we obviously always want to be at the cutting edge, and we use AI in so many different ways now, and really stepped it up 2.5 years ago when some more tools became available. Now, companies that don't embrace AI, like you just said you're doing, and the latest technology, aren't going to be around in 5 years, because other companies that do will surpass them and will get the business through efficiency, through better service, and meeting the needs of clients. So absolutely, it's integrated in virtually everything we do. And the key to it, different from other kinds of technology where the management team says, okay, we're going to do this, and they buy it, they integrate it, and so on. The key to AI, I believe, is from the ground up, giving everybody the tools, every employee the tools to use them and encourage them to, the ones that are curious, the ones that want to. You can't force people to do it, of course, but the ones that they have every opportunity to use AI to do their job better, to be more effective, to eliminate the boring stuff and focus on the more interesting stuff, and to contribute to the company, to reduce the time to do certain things and improve the quality of what we're doing. And so that's the constant challenge, to be an advocate for people, to be their own advocate, and to be integrated and to use the tools that are available and that are getting better and better, whether it's Chat GPT or a Pilot or any of these others that are available, and to use it in their job and see the opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we thought we were on top of AI when 7-8 years ago we discovered how to use it in assessing buildings all over the world, and the pavements, their roofs, their facades, the landscapes, and it's come a long way. We are leading the industry when it comes to that with our technology company. But I'll tell you right now, if we don't stay on top of it, we'll fall behind. We won't be the leaders in 2 years if we don't continue to invest heavily in what's coming up with AI. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to be in business today if you're ready to embrace these things and go after them, knowing that just like you and I, as we failed many times, have had things that happen that aren't the definition of success. We realize if we learn something from it, it's success, really, right? And you're such a fun example of that. When I look at how much you've done, and you've had to fall down many times, whether it's getting turned away in a call or making an assumption that might have been wrong that you had to learn from, right? But
well, you're right, and success really is built on failure, right? People that don't experience failure are not going to be successful. It's similar to science. I mean, this business about trust the science. Well, science is moving. I mean, Newton said what physics was, and then Einstein came along and said, well, it's mostly correct, but actually this is what it is. And one thing he said 102 years ago was just proven 2 years ago. It took that long for humans to prove that he was right. And we have an example. So one thing that helps, that AccuWeather is unique about, is I've studied, and we've integrated in the process, the art and the science of prediction. The art and science of prediction. By that I mean every forecast has uncertainty, and we're in that business. We sell past data, and that's an important part of our business. But the biggest part is forecast. Now, the CDC lost a lot of credibility during COVID. Why is that? They didn't realize they were making forecasts.
Yeah.
So they said everything with the same assurance. And they said, trust the science. Well, the science was moving. It wasn't well defined. They said, you got to wear masks throughout, no matter how. Masks are, maybe not in school for kids 7 years old, but masks are needed, period, and that's it. But they said other things with the same assurance, 30 days to stop the spread. Well, and all kinds of things that had to change. But so they didn't realize they were making a forecast, and so they lost credibility. We understand that. So in all of our forecasts, we emphasize what we're sure about. And where there's uncertainty, you use the King's English to articulate how much uncertainty. And as you approach the event, you change the wording so that you communicate most effectively to the decision maker you're serving what's likely and how likely it is. And see, finally, as you approach the event, you're 100% accurate. So embedding that uncertainty in the right way into a forecast where there's natural uncertainty, just like science evolves, is the key to credibility and trust. And in the end, that's what you need to have. People need to trust what we're saying so they make the right decision. And that's where we add the value. Yeah.
As you said before, trust the science. Well, science is ever moving. It's always on the go. It's always moving here. As we continue to study, the science changes, right? I mean,
it evolves. Science
evolves.
Yeah.
That's why it's science. And yet, it's not like trust the fact. It's not a fact. It's science, and which is good. We have to understand science. So, but I agree with you 100%. You know, the messaging we had through that whole period, I think, cost lives, and you know, bothered me that we were injecting. For me, it bothered me they're injecting kids and pregnant women with something we didn't know what it would deliver, right, and health wise. But you know, that's again, we have to use our own common sense as individuals sometimes, and not trust those that are leaders in government, or you know, as bureaucrats. So, but when we think about competition, what competition? I mean, I'm kind of blind for as when I look at you and I say, where's the competition? I don't see much competition, but I know you always know there's somebody over your shoulder. Now, who are competitors in the market?
Well, there's 2,000 weather apps, and it's mainly us and weather.com, the Weather Channel, which because the Weather Channel had a lot of following, so they have they're our main competitor in terms of usage, but we constantly are gaining on them and increasing the lead and so on. Globally, we're the #1 weather source. We have, when you look at the total, we have more users of our free app than anybody else.
That's awesome.
And we've spent zero advertising.
That's amazing.
You can see the AccuWeather name, the brand, and the product, and the stories and word of mouth, and superior accuracy, which we have proof to demonstrate over and over again, which is our tagline. And it just keeps growing because of that.
Wait, what's the tagline again?
Superior accuracy. Proven
Right.
superior accuracy. Study after study that shows no matter whatever you measure, like with hurricanes, this past hurricane season, 8% more accurate on the track of the storms than the National Hurricane Center. We're the only ones that make forecasts ourselves of the track. Everybody else, we believe, uses the National Hurricane Center. On tornado warnings, of a 5-year study for our clients, we provide an average advance notice of 16.1 minutes on tornadoes. The National Weather Service, 8 minutes. So twice as much advance notice time on average. And they have a false alarm rate that is 77% more than ours. So plants don't have to shut down, which are costly as often. On snow and ice, we provide an average start and end time error. The average is 1.5 hours, whereas the government is a little over 3 hours. So we measure all these things, we track them, and the meteorologists are well aware, and they're all graded and so on, and we got to win. Every day here is the Super Bowl of weather. Okay, other people may not look at it that way, but we do, and we're in competition, and superior accuracy is what it's all about. And our team, and we work as and hierarchy, and of course, to make sure we do everything possible to get the most accurate forecast, is what it's all about. More accurate forecasts. Sorry to interrupt. If you have more, you're going to make better decisions. If you have more advanced notice, like we provided on hurricanes this past season, 20 hours before the National Hurricane Center, we said this storm's going to be named. That's on average. Some cases, it was on Hurricane Beryl. Okay, we said it's going to be a hurricane. X actually red flagged us. People said there's no official warning out. AccuWeather, they red flagged us. That's too bad, because we gave 38 hours advance notice on Beryl being named and hitting the Caribbean islands by the National Hurricane Center. By the time they named it, it was only a few hours out from some of those Caribbean islands.
Wow. Okay, so let me tell you, I've experienced the value of your business, right? I'm still in the snow business. I started in 1981 out of high school, and did some small snow accounts, driveways, parking lots, right? We grew to be a company that does snow all over the country today. And we were able, I'll never forget, back in probably in the 90s, where we started pre-salting with liquid de-ice, or liquid salt, basically, right? And we did it because we knew our forecasts were that accurate. Now, we didn't always do it if it was like a little vague, but we knew if you guys were telling us if something was coming, there was going to be an icy event, right? We would pre-salt, and we would tell them why. We never had an issue with collecting from those customers, because they could argue. They could say, "Why did you spend that money? It didn't even snow," right? We could say, "Well, I got to tell you, you didn't see it because we got an ice storm last night, and we covered it with the pre-salt because of
Yeah.
you guys, because of AccuWeather, right? And so think about again, I can tell you there's many industries that you've changed and helped get better because the information you provide that never was there before, right? And that's just one small example, right? In paving, the weather has to be a certain temperature for us to pave parking lots. So we send a crew of 20 people out there. It costs a lot of money. We have to bet that the weather's going to be the right temperature, 40 degrees and rising. And because of what you guys deliver, we can do it, right? So
Yeah.
it's awesome that where this has gone and how you've been such a huge part of it. So much fun. Um, tell me this. We have a lot of people that listen that are family businesses and they have families in business or out of business. How many kids do you have? And did any of those kids get in the business?
I have 8 children.
Yeah, 8 kids. Holy cow, that's awesome.
Well, I've been around a long time, and my oldest son is on the board. One of my younger boys has worked for AccuWeather for 4 years. He's in marketing. And of course, they all worked for AccuWeather at some point in their career because I put them to work as teenagers, stuffing envelopes, for mailers or working here at AccuWeather, some of them for several years. Another son worked here for about 6 or 7 years. A daughter was in sales for about 8 years. Another daughter for a year and a half before she went to Wharton, and on and on. So every one of them has done some work and have integrated. Of course, I'm an entrepreneur, so not a day goes by that they don't hear something about AccuWeather.
And you're probably not always the easiest father to work for.
Well, I'm always soft on my kids than maybe I should be, but probably in the early years I was tougher than more recently. But I guess we all mellow.
No, hey, don't soften up. Don't I want to hear that?
I said a little bit. I said a little.
All right. Cool. How many years have you been married?
Well, a little more than 4 years. This is not my first marriage, but love my wife. We have a great relationship, and she brought with her a daughter who's 13, and I love her dearly too.
Awesome. Well, you know what? When you work like you worked, and you've worked so much in your life, not everybody can keep up with that. I mean, I've been around a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm one myself. The biggest challenge we have is keeping everybody happy when we're so focused and passionate about what we do, right?
But you got to take time for the family. I mean, I always take the family away twice a year for at least a week somewhere. We go south over Christmas and New Year's, for 7 to 9 days, and we always spend a week in the summer somewhere all together. We have a big house on the Outer Banks that we rent, and in the last vacation down in Florida, we had 28 of us. Everybody was there, all the kids, the spouses, significant others, and all the grandkids.
Where'd you go in Florida?
Key Biscayne.
All right, nice. When you come down to Naples, you got to look me up. I'm in Naples for 7 months a year, and then I'm up in Chicagoland area for 4 to 5 months a year. But we got a beautiful country. It's fun to discover it, isn't it?
It sure is. Naples is a beautiful area for sure. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. Okay, so like I say, we're running close to the end. I want to make sure we catch some of the stuff, and I want Chris to chime in. And Chris might usually have a question or two as well. Chris, you've got a entrepreneurial machine here. Now, don't waste that time. I want to hear a couple of good questions for our friend Dr. Joel.
Absolutely. Dr. Joel, we have had some exceptional entrepreneurs on this podcast who are sharp as can be, and you are every bit as sharp or more sharp than our, most incredible guests. Can you talk about, how you stay so sharp, how you stay so motivated? How'd you do this, man? You got it going on, my man.
Well, I don't know. I'm 85, but don't act any differently or think any differently than when I was 32. That's the key. But you got to stay in shape. You got to eat healthy. Lots of wild fish and so on, and vegetables and such. I do yoga. I go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week. And push yourself. I can hold a plank for 3 minutes and 15 seconds and do 28 push-ups and such. So keep pushing yourself. Not only, as I tell my kids, never lose your competitive edge.
I love it.
That's awesome, man. Okay, I have so many questions. So, I mean, it seems like, great weather forecasting is more than just focused on the weather. You're really just great at forecasting. Like what makes a great forecast? Like how did you crack that mystery?
I don't know. I mean, I made other forecasts. I remember when Francis Gary Powers was shot down over Russia. I used to write a column in the Daily Collegian. I was an undergraduate with the school newspaper at Penn State, and said, what if it was not a weather plane like President Eisenhower was saying? What if it was really a spy plane? Because I'm not aware of any weather planes up there. It was a forecast. It turned out I was right. And I made, I predicted presidential elections against the odds and things like that. So I have a knack and an interest in prediction. You got to be, sometimes a prediction is just going against the consensus. In 1987, I wrote a letter published in Barron's predicting the crash. The other newsletter writer wrote in from Wall Street, Dr. Myers is crazy, should stick to weather forecasting. And the next day, the market crashed 500 points, so the biggest percentage drop in history. So,
Wow.
I have sort of a knack for predicting certain things that maybe to me seem obvious, but they're not common. And I don't know why I'm able to do that. And I'm sure I tend to remember the times I'm right, but as we all do. But certainly with AccuWeather, we have very specific statistics, and you can't, you got to learn from every mistake. So we're far from right every time, but we just like the Super Bowl winner, probably lost some games, maybe 1 or 2 during the season pretty badly, but at the end of the day, they're the champion, and that's the way we look at it.
Hey, Chris, let me ask a question quick, because so my thing, I'm involved in some stuff with this administration, people that are in the administration and some economists outside the administration advising them, and I'm telling my friends that there's going to be a little bit of pain as we make all these changes in the government and we catch all this crazy stuff that's gone on. And then there's gonna be a lot of gain. I look at it as, look at it as 1980 through 84 Reagan, right? Let's say 83 Reagan, when there's a little bit of pain for the first year and a half. By year 2, year 3, anybody could see the gain in the economy as he did the right stuff. I feel like it's kind of that again. In your opinion, if you were to predict the economy 1 year out and 3 years out, what would you say?
Well, that's not what we're here for, but I agree. I think over the next year, there's going to be some recessionary pressure. Frankly, the economy, there were signs of a bubble to begin with. Crypto was in a bubble. As Larry Summers said, he doesn't understand it. When you look at the stock market, a bubble like never before seen. 70% of the value of all the equity globally are U.S. companies. Never seen anything like it. The U.S. has 20% of the global GDP, 4% of the world's population, 70% of the value of publicly traded companies. So the PE ratio and some of the other measures of value, when you take the average look at the S&P 500, any of those, certainly in the era of where they were in 1929 and also around 2000. And if you look at the Schiller index, which is a longer term, looks 10 years back, as you know, even more extreme what we've had. So already in terms of value, that doesn't mean that stocks have to drop. but it does suggest that there's more room on the downside than on the upside. On the other hand, there's $7 trillion of cash in money market funds, which is still a lot of firepower. So I'm talking more about the market than the economy, but they're intertwined, as we all know. And so I think there will be recessionary tendencies over the next 12 to 18, 24 months. What happens after that? I don't know. Certainly, it depends on how everything shakes out. It's a global economy, and the tariffs were a bit of an uncertainty. They could work. I mean, the tariffs I look at are basically a national sales tax. Would we be better off with a national sales tax or the tariffs because they're more even? I don't know. But certainly, we need to do something about the imbalance. And I've stated this in some think tanks and so on. I've been involved in what I'm about to say. The United States has spent 4 to 5% of its GDP, not the budget, but the entire GDP, which is about $1 trillion a year, on defense or military. Canada and Europe and Japan, 1 to 1.5%. That difference of several percent, there were reasons for it when you go back in the beginning, but it probably went on far too long. But even if you take a conservative number, that if Europe and Canada and Japan had taken up an extra 100, 200 billion of what we've spent over the last 40 years, and then you add the interest we've had to pay on the national debt for that excess, you're talking about probably something like 1/3 of the entire national debt of $36 trillion. So in other words, we've been protecting the rest of the world, but they relied on us unfairly. And it's conceivable that 12 trillion of that 36 trillion is due to that. And if it had been distributed differently, if the debt was only 24 trillion, that would reduce our ultimate interest payments by $500 billion a year now and going forward. It's a significant amount of money. Compounding, as I said, is the 8th wonder of the world. Probably I'm giving you a bigger answer than you wanted, but that's my thoughts on that.
I love it. So we're close because I believe it's a year to 18 months that we're going to have a little bit of pain, and then within 24 months we're going to see big gains coming. And by year 3, before the next election, it's going to be a beautiful place to be. Economy will be rolling forward very fast, in my opinion, fast. And here's what I believe: besides the tariffs, there's another part of the puzzle that's going to happen, in my opinion. Right, flat tax. Once these taxes are renewed, the Trump tax plan is renewed from 4-5 years ago. Next will be a flat tax suggested by Steve Forbes over the last 20 years. And Steve Moore, who doesn't believe in tariffs, Art Laffer and Kudlow, all these guys are together saying flat tax, flat tax. These are people that this administration really trusts. I'm seeing a 15% flat tax within 18 months. That's going to then create this place where all business wants to come to manufacture, to grow from all over the world, because they don't want to pay the tariff, but they sure would like this one of the lowest tax countries in the world, right? To build out of. So that's my prediction. We'll see what happens. We'll watch it. We're going to watch this 2 years from now, and we're going to say, boy, those two guys, those two crazy entrepreneurs, they're pretty close.
Well, you may be right, but there's got to be a way to protect, the poor, and with even 15%, it's up to a certain level, maybe too much.
Well, there's going to be they're looking at no tax up to 100,000 a year in income, or 150. So we'll see what happens. But they're going back and forth on that, either $100,000 non-tax or 150,000, which it seems pretty high, with no income tax, federal income tax, right? So
but then you can't have any deductions.
Yes, you're exactly right.
You got to be fair over it. No deductions. It's got to apply to everything, and that is really capitalism, because it doesn't weight one thing over the other.
100%.
Which is going to be painful to some, because there's a lot of people that have certain,
big write-offs.
Another. But I'm happy to play in that game.
You're right. Me too. That's awesome. Okay, sorry, Chris. Sorry to interrupt, but I knew he was really sharp on the on the fiscal side and all that global fiscal knowledge of this guy was there. So I just want to hear it. So I appreciate that. Chris, any more questions from you?
I think you have arguably one of the most unique perspectives on the state of weather over the last 7 decades or so. Like, what is your perspective? Like, is the media correct? Is weather getting more extreme, more dangerous, or is this just part of the cycle, par for the course?
So I thought you'd never ask. I did recently launch a book, Invisible Iceberg, How Weather and Climate Shaped History. I launched it at Davos, the World Economic Forum, last year. And this is all about the past. So let's look at what's happened. So over the history of the world, most of the history has been warmer than it is even today. We're in a relatively cool period. There have been 4 great ice ages. We're in a current ice age where there's been 4 advances and retreats of the ice. And who knows if there'll be another advance or not in this period. We're currently in an interglacial period. The ice, the maximum extent of the ice, and it was mainly in the Northern Hemisphere, occurred 12,000 years ago. So 12,000 years ago, when you think about it, it's 6 times as far back as when Jesus walked the earth. Okay, to put it in perspective. At that time, the ice was 2.5 miles thick, 12,000 feet thick over Montreal, Canada. The southern extent of the ice represented by the rocks in Central Park. The ocean levels 12,000 years ago were 450 feet lower than they are today because all that water was trapped in ice on the continents. And so since then, the ice has been melting, and the ocean levels have been rising, and it's been warming. Now, there was a little ice age from 1300 to 1850. And that's during that period, there were some epidemics and crop failures and some serious stuff that happened because it was very cold at certain times. But we've been coming out of that naturally. Now, over the last 70 years, as we know the greenhouse effect. We've known it for well over 100 years. The greenhouse effect is where the sun heats the earth, the surface, with mainly ultraviolet radiation hits the earth, and that heats up the surface, and the surface in turn heats the atmosphere. The earth, because it has a temperature above absolute zero, as everything does, gives off radiation, but it's mainly infrared radiation. The gases in the atmosphere, particularly CO2, carbon dioxide, and water vapor and methane, absorb much more of the infrared from the earth, but very little of the ultraviolet. So the ultraviolet comes in, heats up the earth. The earth gives off infrared radiation because of its temperature. Some of that is absorbed by the atmosphere. Some of it's radiated up, some radiated back down, and that recycling is the greenhouse effect. It's like a greenhouse that traps some of the heat in the Earth atmosphere system. So we always knew before humans even set foot on the Earth that the moon, being the same average distance from the Earth, from the sun, I'm sorry, the Earth and the moon are the same distance on average from the sun. So they should be warmed at the same rate. Now the moon goes around the Earth, so on average it's the same distance as the Earth goes around the sun. But yet the temperature on the moon is about 40 degrees Fahrenheit colder than the Earth because it has no atmosphere. For the last 70 years, though, we've been increasing the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels. No question about that. And so as a result, the Earth's temperature has been warming, and it's probably increased about 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit, about 1.5 degrees Celsius. And the climate models predict it's going to continue to warm and significantly. In fact, our database suggests that the warming is occurring faster than the climate models are suggesting. Just looking at the data and projecting. It's not even. Some parts of the world aren't warming at all. Other parts are warming much more rapidly and maybe 5, 6, 7 degrees on average warmer than they were 70 years ago. So, and a complicating factor that doesn't get much discussion is water vapor. The amount of water vapor that can exist in the atmosphere depends on the temperature. So as the temperature rises, due to either CO2 being a greenhouse gas or methane, which is another very powerful greenhouse gas. More water vapors in the atmosphere. The water vapor is a very strong greenhouse gas, and it absorbs the infrared radiation and circulates it back down. And that may be part of the reason it's not fully accounted for in the climate models for the more rapid warming. So that's a long answer, but that now, what's the future hold? Well, clearly, the demand for energy is increasing rapidly and probably will accelerate because of AI and these big data centers and all of this. There's no sign it's going to slow down. It's going to probably accelerate. Plus, with greater wealth, particularly in the undeveloped areas, Africa and so on, more and more air conditioning is being put in. And as it gets warmer, the air conditionings are going to need more energy. Let's face it, electricity is the wonder that has brought us prosperity. And we need more and more electricity. To generate electricity, you need to burn coal or oil or natural gas, or you need to produce it with wind and solar. Price of solar is coming down dramatically, but still the growth of solar can't keep up with the growth and demand. So we'll continue to use fossil fuels.
We want more nuclear. We need
Well,
more
I'm going to
nuclear.
get to that. You're ahead of that. So fission, we've used for nuclear plant, but of course it has waste materials that are dangerous. They get buried. Who knows where they are in 100, 200 years. But the answer to all of this may be fusion. What happens on the sun? Now, it's always 10 years away, 15 years away. Some people believe it's never going to happen. It will happen. Humans are innovative and creative and with the benefit of AI. So if we have fusion in 15 years commercially available, everything goes to that. That'll be amazing because fusion has no global warming impact, no greenhouse gas impact, and it's virtually free energy, which will power anything we need. We just need enough copper for the wires. But and I think that's what's going to happen. Now, there are other things like hydrogen and hydrothermal and so on. Maybe there'll be a breakthrough in one of those areas, but we've got a lot of great entrepreneurs. Who knows what Elon will come up with and so on. But a lot of people working on solving these, and we've always solved every problem in the past because we can't have it continue to warm for another 100, 150 years like it's been. Although there will be winners and losers. I mean, Canada will turn out okay, right? if it warms another 5 or 10 degrees. But there are places where it will be impossible to live, where people live now and barely survive, through summer months or two. It gets up to the borderline where humans can survive. You add another 2, 3, 4 degrees on average to some of those places, and they'll be uninhabitable. So we will have significant geopolitical impacts. Sorry for that long answer.
Great answer. Now one quick question and one quick answer. What percentage do you guess is of this warming or climate change, drastic climate change, is caused by humans and their need for this fuel?
Nobody knows for sure, but I would say at least 2/3 of the warming is due to human activity.
Wow. All right. That's one that I wouldn't expect. All right. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Well, I'm not glad to hear. I'm not. It's not pleasantly a pleasant thing to hear, but I like hearing it from you. It means a lot. So I appreciate that. Okay. So okay. Let me go over what I got, Chris. Tell me if there's anything else.
An estimate. I'm not an expert in this.
No, I know that. No,
it could be, but it is significant. It could be a half. It could be 2/3. It could even be more. But my guess would be somewhere around 2/3. But it's
because we had nothing to do with the change 12,000 years ago, right? And now we do. So it's like, what's the difference now? And if it's humans by that much difference, hey, that's good.
Well, it's important too that while during cold periods there were terrible pandemics and crop failures and so on. So in terms of singularity, it had a very harmful effect. But on the other hand, humans evolved and developed during a relatively cool period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so I got a ton of stuff out of this, Chris. Give me 3 or 4 amazing things you picked up out of this, and there's a lot more than that. I'm going to add a couple that I saw that were amazing that everybody should take note of.
Yeah, I loved your core values: innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. ICE. You even had a great acronym for it. Um, if you want 100 clients, call 25,000 prospects and don't stop until you get them. That's an amazing feat there. What else? Success is built on failure. What do you got, Gary?
No, those are great ones. And, I like the, if you just improve it simply 1% per day, right? You're
Oh,
going to be
yeah.
360% better after a year. And whatever
No,
you're,
not
whatever,
360, no, not 300. It's
no,
34
no, you're
times
right.
as great.
Yeah, you're right.
Because
You're
it's
right.
compounding. If you just
Okay.
1%, it would be three, but you're right. It's much more than that because you gain on the game.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. But it's basically that 300 to 400% better, right? Than you were to begin that year. And
34 times better, 3,400% better.
Okay, yeah, okay, we'll go with that. I like it. All right. So when I look at the one thing that I've said a couple times, ma'am, in this thing, because I believe in it, is your focus on whatever you're passionate about. It 10,000 hours focusing on something you're totally passionate on is going to put you at expert level. Now, if you're mediocre, you don't care about it, you're not excited about it, maybe not. But when you're passionate, like this amazing guest of ours, Dr. Joel Myers has been, you're going to be an expert at stuff fast if you're as passionate. But 10,000 hours, just figure 10,000 hours. That's Malcolm Gladwell's theory, and I believe in 100%. So that's about all I got. I really appreciate you today, buddy. You're amazing, man, and I'm proud to know you, and really excited that that you're going to be mentoring people that listen to our podcast. And so thank you so much for everything you do and you've done for our country. And thank you for spending your time with us today, bud.
My pleasure. Thanks for all the challenging questions, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. So till next time, see us next time at Dish Digger CEO, and see ya.